In the middle of a five-star hotel, a millionaire sheikh speaks Arabic, and no one understands him. The waiters panic, the manager freezes, then, out of nowhere, a maid in a simple black and white uniform steps forward. What happened next shocked every single guest and completely changed her life. You won't believe what happened inside one of the most expensive hotels in the city. The evening had just begun, and the grand dining hall was alive with the soft hum of conversations, the gentle clinking of fine crystal glasses, and the faint aroma of freshly baked bread drifting from the kitchen. Every chandelier sparkled like frozen fireworks above the polished marble floor, casting golden light over the wealthy guests who filled the room. Businessmen in tailored suits leaned in close over quiet negotiations, their voices low but intense. Members of royalty from faraway lands sat in private corners, sipping rare teas and exchanging polite smiles. The waiters moved like dancers, swift, silent, and precise, balancing trays of gourmet dishes that looked more like works of art than food. Everything was perfect, until something happened that no one in that room expected. At the center of the hall, sitting at a table draped in the finest white linen, was a tall, elegant man. His crisp white kandura flowed smoothly down to the polished floor, and the black agal rested perfectly on his headscarf. His neatly groomed beard framed a face of quiet confidence. This was the millionaire sheikh, a man known not only for his immense fortune, but also for his influence in international business circles. People said a single deal with him could change a company's future overnight. It wasn't surprising that almost every eye in the room had glanced toward him, at least once. Some whispered about the possible deals he was making that night. Others admired his calm presence. A few, hoping for a chance encounter, positioned themselves nearby in the hopes he might notice them. When the head waiter, a tall, sharply dressed man with years of experience serving high-profile guests, finally approached the sheikh's table, the whole room seemed to quiet just a little. The waiter bowed politely and asked how he could be of service. That's when it happened. The sheikh spoke, but not in English, not in French, not in the polished, rehearsed greetings most VIP guests used at international venues. He spoke in Arabic. His voice was deep, yet smooth, the words rolling off his tongue with the confidence of someone speaking in the language of his heart. And here's the twist. No one understood him. The waiter froze, blinking rapidly. His polite smile faltered. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, glancing nervously toward the manager across the room. The sheikh repeated himself, a little slower this time, his tone still calm but carrying the subtle expectation that his request should be understood. The manager hurried over, smoothing his jacket, and tried to respond in broken English, hoping the sheikh might adapt. But the sheikh continued in Arabic. A small frown formed on his face, not of anger but of quiet disappointment. The tension in the room began to build. The chefs peeked out from the kitchen door. Waiters exchanged helpless glances. Some guests craned their necks, whispering, "Why can't anyone understand him? This is a luxury hotel. Shouldn't they have someone who speaks Arabic?" It was awkward, uncomfortable, and a little embarrassing for the staff. The high-class waiters trained to serve VIP guests could navigate multiple wine pairings, describe rare truffle dishes, and quote French culinary terms without hesitation. But in that moment, none of them could bridge the gap between the sheikh and his needs. People started shifting in their seats, sensing the unspoken tension. Even those far from the sheikh's table could feel it, like an invisible ripple moving across the room. And then, from the far corner of the hall, something unexpected happened. A movement so small at first that few noticed. A young black maid quietly set down the tray she had been carrying. Her uniform was plain, a neat black dress with a crisp white apron. Her hair tied back simply. She wasn't dressed to catch anyone's eye, and most of the time, people barely noticed her as she cleared tables and replaced glasses. But tonight was different. She straightened her posture, took a slow breath, and began walking toward the sheikh's table. Her steps were steady, confident, not rushed, not hesitant. The murmur of conversation in the room began to fade as more people noticed her. A few waiters frowned in confusion. Why was she approaching the most important guest in the room? The manager glanced at her with wide eyes as if silently asking, "What are you doing?" She stopped just beside the Sheikh's table. Every eye in the room was on her now. She lowered her head respectfully and, without hesitation, began to speak in flawless Arabic. The words flowed naturally, her pronunciation perfect, her tone polite yet warm. The moment she spoke, the Sheikh's expression changed completely. His brows lifted slightly, his eyes lit up, and the faintest smile curved his lips. The three businessmen seated with him leaned back in surprise. The manager froze mid-step. The waiters, who just moments ago had been scrambling in confusion, stood completely still, their mouths slightly open. The room was silent, except for the quiet melody of her voice as she responded to whatever the sheikh had said earlier. The sheikh replied, his voice now carrying an unmistakable warmth. Ana muta ajib. Your Arabic is flawless. She smiled modestly and replied, Shukran, ya Sayyidi. Thank you, sir. What had been a moment of awkward tension had now transformed into something extraordinary. The wealthy guests, who had expected just another typical night of fine dining and quiet conversation, were now watching something they would talk about long after leaving that room. And in that instant, the young maid, once invisible in the background, had become the most interesting person in the hall. Her name was Aisha. For months, she had been cleaning tables and serving in the background of one of the city's most expensive hotels. She moved quietly, her steps almost soundless on the marble floors, her hands quick but gentle as she replaced glasses and wiped down tables. To the wealthy guests, she was just another member of the invisible staff, someone they barely noticed as they discussed million-dollar deals over dinner. Her uniform was simple, a black dress with a crisp white apron, no jewelry, no perfume, no sign of the life she lived beyond the hotel walls. She was part of the scenery. Or at least that's what everyone thought, until that night. The dining hall was alive with quiet conversations and clinking glasses when it happened. The millionaire sheikh, seated at the center table, had spoken in Arabic to the head waiter. His deep, commanding voice carried a confidence that filled the air, but no one understood him. The waiter froze. The manager stepped in, fumbling with words in English. The chefs peeked from the kitchen, and the other waiters looked at each other helplessly. The tension in the room was sharp. Guests leaned closer to see what was going on, and then Aisha stopped what she was doing. She was clearing dishes at the far end of the room, her hands still wrapped around a stack of fine porcelain plates. Her heart began to race. She could understand every word the sheikh had just spoken. For a brief moment, she hesitated. She wasn't supposed to approach VIP guests directly, especially not the most important man in the room. But something in his voice, the way he repeated himself with quiet disappointment, pushed her to act. She set the plates down, smoothed her apron, and began walking toward him. The sound of her footsteps seemed louder than usual, echoing faintly in the hall. One by one, heads turned, guests watched with curiosity, wondering what a maid was doing walking straight toward the sheikh's table. The waiters looked alarmed. The manager's eyes widened as if to silently warn her to stop. But Aisha didn't stop. She reached the sheikh's table and stood tall, her hands clasped in front of her. She lowered her head respectfully before speaking. And then, in perfect, flawless Arabic, she replied to him. The words flowed smoothly from her lips, her pronunciation clear and precise. It was the kind of Arabic spoken by someone who had not just learned it, but lived it. The entire room froze. The three businessmen sitting with the sheikh stared at her in disbelief. One of them even leaned forward slightly, as if he couldn't trust his ears. The hotel manager's jaw dropped, and he stood rooted to the spot. But it was the sheikh's reaction that transformed the atmosphere. His serious face softened into a wide smile, and his eyes lit up with genuine delight. Ana mutajib, he said warmly. I am impressed. The corners of Aisha's lips lifted into a modest smile. Shukran, ya Sayyidi, she replied politely. Thank you, sir. The businessmen exchanged glances, murmuring to each other in Arabic. They seemed just as surprised as the sheikh. The sheikh leaned slightly forward, his smile widening. Your Arabic is flawless. Where did you learn to speak like that? Aisha hesitated for a moment. She could feel the weight of every gaze in the room pressing down on her. She wasn't used to being the center of attention. My father taught me, she said softly. He was a language teacher. I grew up speaking Arabic at home before we moved here. The sheikh nodded slowly, clearly impressed not just with her skill, but with her composure. It is rare to meet someone outside my country who speaks with such respect and accuracy, he said. By now, the room had completely shifted. The awkward tension from moments earlier was gone, replaced by a warm, curious energy. Guests who had been quietly eating were now leaning forward in their seats. Some even smiled, sensing they were witnessing something special. The sheikh gestured for the manager to approach. The poor man, still looking stunned, walked over quickly. The sheikh spoke to him again, but this time through Aisha. She translated effortlessly, her voice calm and confident, her eyes focused on the sheikh's words. It turned out the sheikh had been trying to make a special request for a dish from his home country, something not on the menu. He wasn't upset, just frustrated that no one understood him. With Aisha's help, the message was clear and the chefs in the kitchen quickly began preparing the meal. The sheikh thanked her again, and before she could return to her duties, he did something unexpected. He invited her to sit for a moment. Aisha's eyes widened in surprise. She glanced at the manager, who hesitated before giving a small nod. Carefully, she took the seat he offered. They spoke briefly, just a few minutes, but it was enough for the whole room to see the unusual sight. A young maid in a simple uniform seated at the table of one of the wealthiest men in the world. When she finally stood to leave, the sheikh told her, "Never hide your talents. The world notices when you step forward." Aisha smiled, bowed her head respectfully, and returned to her work. The rest of the night, the atmosphere in the dining hall felt different. Guests whispered about her, some admiring her courage, others curious about her story. Even the staff looked at her in a new light. She had walked into that night just another invisible face in the background, but with a single moment of bravery and a language she had carried in her heart since childhood, Aisha had reminded everyone that greatness can be hidden in the most unexpected places. And the sheikh? He left the hotel later that evening with a satisfied smile, telling his companions, "That girl has more dignity than most people I meet in boardrooms." As they spoke, the grand dining hall seemed to shift. Guests started leaning in ever so slightly, pretending to sip their drinks while their ears focused on the exchange. Conversations at other tables grew quieter. The clinking of cutlery seemed to fade into the background. Everyone wanted to know, how could a maid, dressed in a simple black and white uniform, speak like that? The three businessmen seated with the sheikh were still stunned. One of them tilted his head, studying Aisha with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. The hotel manager stood nearby, his lips pressed tightly together, unsure whether to be proud of her or worried she had overstepped her role. Even the waiters, frozen in place, exchanged glances as if silently asking each other, "Did you know she could do that?" The sheikh, however, didn't seem surprised in a negative way. If anything, his eyes shone with growing admiration. Aisha stood tall, her voice steady. She explained that she had once lived in the Middle East. Her father, she said, had been a language teacher, a man who loved words, culture, and the art of communication. From the time she was little, she had learned Arabic at home alongside her native tongue. It was the language of family dinners, bedtime stories, and her father's patient corrections as she practiced difficult sounds. But life had changed drastically. After her parents passed away, she found herself alone, with no family to rely on. She moved to this city in search of work, hoping for a fresh start. Without money or connections, the reality hit her hard. Doors did not open easily for people like her. The only job she could find was cleaning in hotels. It was honest work, and she was grateful for it, but it was also thankless. She worked long hours, mostly ignored by the guests she served. No one ever asked about her life, her skills, or what she had done before. She was just the maid. She admitted to the sheikh, "I never told anyone about my language skills because no one ever asked, and honestly, I didn't think it mattered." The sheikh's brow furrowed slightly, as if he was weighing her words. "It matters," he said firmly in Arabic. "The things that make you unique always matter. Sometimes, the world just needs to see them." By now, even the people seated far from the sheikh's table were openly watching. A few were whispering to each other, their eyes darting between Aisha and the sheikh. It was the kind of moment that felt bigger than itself. An unexpected shift in the air, a story unfolding right before their eyes. The hotel manager, realizing he couldn't stop what was happening, slowly stepped back, allowing the moment to play out. The sheikh asked her more questions about her childhood and her favorite books in Arabic, and whether she had visited his home country. Aisha answered each question with ease, her words flowing as naturally as if she were speaking to an old friend. As they talked, the three businessmen began to smile. One of them even laughed softly at a joke Aisha made in Arabic, a subtle, clever play on words that only a native-level speaker would catch. The sheikh chuckled too, clearly enjoying the rare surprise of finding someone in this foreign city who could speak to him without a translator. Finally, the sheikh leaned back in his chair and said, "Do you know what impressed me the most? Not your flawless Arabic, though it is remarkable, but your courage to step forward when no one else could help me. That is rare." Aisha lowered her gaze modestly. "I only wanted to help, sir," she said. "And you did," the sheikh replied warmly. "More than you know." He gestured for the manager to come forward. This time, there was no hesitation. The sheikh spoke to him briefly, and Aisha translated his words into English for the staff. The special dish the sheikh had requested earlier, one from his homeland, was to be prepared immediately, exactly as described. The chefs in the kitchen, now fully understanding what was needed, rushed to begin. The sheikh then turned back to Aisha. "You should never hide your abilities. The world has a way of overlooking people who remain silent, but when you speak, speak with all your heart, just as you did today." Her cheeks warmed at his words. She wasn't used to praise, especially not from someone of his status. For a moment, she almost forgot they were in the middle of a crowded dining hall, with dozens of people still watching. After a short pause, she thanked him and began to step back, ready to return to her duties. But the sheikh surprised her again. "Before you go, Hessa," he said, "join us for a cup of tea." A gasp rippled through the nearby tables. A maid sitting with a millionaire sheikh? That was unheard of. The manager looked as though he might faint, but the sheikh's authority was absolute. Aisha hesitated, then accepted. She sat at the edge of the table, her posture straight, her hands resting neatly in her lap. They sipped tea together, the conversation light but warm. For those few minutes, the gap between maid and millionaire seemed to vanish. She wasn't just a maid anymore, she was a respected guest at his table. When the tea was finished, Aisha stood and bowed her head politely. The sheikh thanked her once more and said something she would never forget. "Opportunity often comes disguised as a small moment. You recognized yours. Never forget this night." She returned to her work, her mind buzzing. The other staff now looked at her differently. Some nodded at her with quiet respect. Others whispered her name. Guests who had ignored her earlier now smiled as she passed their tables. By the time the sheikh left the hotel that night, his special dish carefully packed for him to take, the entire dining hall was still talking about what had happened. And somewhere deep down, Aisha knew that her life had changed. Not because she had been noticed by a powerful man, but because she had dared to step forward and let the world see what she had carried inside all along. The sheikh seemed genuinely fascinated by Aisha. His questions weren't rushed or formal. They carried the warmth of someone who truly wanted to know her story. He asked about her family, her dreams, and what she hoped for her future. Aisha answered politely, her tone respectful, but inside she was puzzled. Why would a man of such power and wealth care about the life of a maid? People in her position were often invisible to guests like him, yet here he was, leaning forward slightly, giving her his full attention as if she were the most important person in the room. The businessmen sitting nearby exchanged glances. They were used to seeing the sheikh negotiate billion-dollar deals, discuss politics, and command entire rooms, but this was different. He wasn't discussing oil or investments. He was listening to a maid as if she were an honored guest. Then, without warning, the sheikh turned to the shocked hotel manager. His deep, commanding voice switched from Arabic to English so that everyone could understand. "This woman," he said clearly, "is wasted as a maid. From now on, she works for me, translator and assistant." The words echoed through the grand dining hall. For a moment, it was as if time stood still. Murmurs erupted across the room. Guests leaned closer to each other, whispering in disbelief. The businessmen looked like they had just witnessed a miracle. Even the waiters froze mid-step, their trays trembling slightly in their hands. The hotel manager's face went pale. He stuttered, unsure of how to respond. Sir, she's one of our staff, and the sheikh raised his hand slightly, and the manager fell silent. You will release her from her duties here, the sheikh continued. She is coming with me. She has a gift, and it must be used, not wasted wiping tables and carrying dishes. Aisha stood frozen, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she could feel every pair of eyes in the room on her. Did I hear that right? Did he just offer me a job? The sheikh must have seen the doubt on her face because he smiled warmly and addressed her directly. Aisha, you have something rare, knowledge, courage, and grace under pressure. You stepped forward when no one else could help me. That alone tells me you are capable of more than this job allows you to be. Her lips parted, but no words came out. She was too stunned. You will travel, he went on, painting a picture of her future with every sentence. You will see new places, meet people from different worlds, and learn more than you ever imagined. And you will never have to clean tables again. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Some guests smiled, clearly moved by what was happening. Others looked skeptical, as if they couldn't believe the sheikh would hire someone on the spot. Aisha's mind was spinning. Just an hour ago, she had been wiping crumbs off tablecloths, keeping her head down, and blending into the background like always. Now, this man, one of the most powerful people she had ever met, was offering her a way out of the life she thought she was stuck in. But why me? She finally asked in a soft voice. The sheikh's expression grew even kinder. Because talent should not be hidden, Aisha. Too many people go unseen because no one gives them a chance. I want to give you that chance. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. She quickly blinked them away, but the sheikh noticed. You do not have to answer now, he said gently. But know this, the offer stands. I will speak with the manager, and if you wish to join me, you will be welcomed. The hotel manager, still recovering from the shock, forced a polite smile. Of course, sir, if that is your wish. The sheikh nodded, then returned his gaze to Aisha. Think about it tonight. Tomorrow morning, if you are ready, you will leave with my team. She nodded slowly, still trying to process the whirlwind of the past few minutes. The sheikh then lifted his cup of tea toward her in a small gesture of respect before taking a sip. The businessmen began talking among themselves again, but now their glances toward Aisha were different, curious, perhaps even impressed. When the sheikh finally stood to leave, the entire dining hall seemed to hold its breath. His entourage followed him toward the exit, and just before he disappeared through the grand doors, he looked back and gave Aisha a nod, as if sealing the promise he had just made. The moment the doors closed, the room erupted in hushed conversation. Some staff members approached her quietly, congratulating her. A few guests even smiled and wished her luck. The hotel manager, still in disbelief, simply told her to take the rest of the evening off. Aisha walked to the staff corridor, her steps unsteady. She leaned against the wall, her heart still racing. Everything she had dreamed of, travel, purpose, a life beyond the limits of her current job, suddenly felt within reach. That night she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the sheikh's words playing in her mind over and over. She thought about her father, about the lessons he had taught her, and about how he had always said, your skills are your wings, Aisha. One day they will carry you far. Maybe that day had come. And as the city lights twinkled outside her window, Aisha decided that tomorrow, when the sheikh's team arrived, she would be ready. Because sometimes the biggest changes in life start with the smallest acts of courage, like stepping forward to speak when no one else can. That single conversation changed everything for Aisha. By the end of the day, she was no longer wearing her black and white maid's uniform. The rough apron she'd tied around her waist for months was gone, replaced by a modest but elegant dress chosen by the sheikh's assistant. She sat at his table, her posture straight, her eyes alert, translating his meetings with smooth confidence. The shift was almost unreal. Hours earlier, she had been clearing away plates and quietly mopping the edges of the dining hall so no guest would trip. Now she was leaning toward powerful men and women, conveying their words in flawless Arabic and English, her voice steady and clear. The sheikh spoke with pride whenever she translated for him. He even introduced her to several high-profile guests, saying, "This is Aisha, my new translator. She is very skilled." Those simple words that carried weight. Guests who had once ignored her now greeted her warmly, shaking her hand and looking her in the eye. For the first time since she had started working at the hotel, Aisha felt truly seen, not as part of the background, but as someone who mattered. Meanwhile, the hotel staff whispered among themselves. Some smiled and said she deserved it. Others shook their heads in disbelief, calling it pure luck. But Aisha knew deep in her heart that this wasn't luck. It was preparation, meeting the right moment. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, the sheikh speaking Arabic, the confusion in the room, and her decision to step forward. She had hesitated at first. After all, she was just a maid. But something in her had whispered, "You can help. You have the skills. Don't stay silent." If she had ignored that voice, she would still be clearing tables unnoticed and unheard. Instead, she was now sitting at the sheikh's table, a seat that had once been unimaginable. Word of what happened spread quickly through the hotel, then across the city. Stories have a way of growing wings, and this one soared. People in cafes and office buildings were talking about the maid who surprised a millionaire sheikh. Social media picked it up, with headlines like, "Humble hotel worker lands dream job after speaking up," and "From cleaning tables to global travel, a single moment changed her life." Some doubted the story, saying it sounded like a fairy tale. But those who had been in the dining hall knew the truth. They had seen the way the sheikh's face lit up when Aisha spoke, the respect in his tone when he addressed her, and the certainty in his voice when he offered her the position. Aisha's phone buzzed with messages from people she hadn't spoken to in years. Old friends congratulated her. Former colleagues from past jobs said they were inspired. Even distant relatives reached out, saying they had read about her and felt proud. But for Aisha, the real victory wasn't the job title or the sudden attention. It was the realization that she had the power to shape her own destiny. She remembered her father's words from long ago. "Your skills are your wings, Aisha. One day they will carry you far." She had always thought that day would come in a planned, orderly way, after saving enough money or finding the right opportunity. She never imagined it would arrive in the middle of an ordinary workday, wearing a maid's apron and holding a half-full tray of glasses. That night, the sheikh's driver escorted her to a nearby boutique to pick out travel-appropriate clothing. The sheikh's assistant handed her an itinerary, 3 countries in the next month alone. Her role would be to accompany the sheikh during meetings, help with translations, and occasionally assist with cultural exchanges. It felt like stepping into another world. The girl who had once counted coins to afford a bus ride to work was now preparing to board private planes. The woman who had blended into the background was now at the center of high-level conversations. And yet, she remained humble. She knew this was just the beginning, and she had a lot to learn. The sheikh had made it clear. "I'm giving you a chance, Aisha, but it is your responsibility to grow into it. Keep learning. Keep improving." Those words stayed with her. She didn't want to just be the maid who got lucky. She wanted to be a respected professional, someone who earned her place not just once, but every single day. Her story continued to spread, reaching people from all walks of life. Some were inspired to dust off old skills they had forgotten. Others finally signed up for classes they had been putting off. A few even admitted that they had been waiting for the right time to use their talents. But after hearing about Aisha, they realized that the right time might come when they least expected it. And it all happened because she spoke up when no one else could. It wasn't the most comfortable choice, it wasn't the safest choice, but it was the right choice. In the weeks that followed, Aisha traveled to places she had only seen in magazines. She learned how to navigate diplomatic dinners, how to read a room full of powerful people, and how to carry herself with quiet confidence. Each day brought a new challenge, and each day she reminded herself of that one defining moment in the hotel dining hall. Sometimes at night, she would think about how close she had come to staying silent. She would imagine the alternate reality, her continuing to clean tables while someone else tried and failed to understand the sheikh. Life would have gone on, unchanged, but instead, she had stepped forward. So if there was one message she wanted to leave behind for anyone who heard her story, it was this. Your skills, your knowledge, your hidden talents, they matter. Even if no one has asked about them yet, even if you've kept them tucked away for years, they might be the very thing that changes your life. The moment might come when you least expect it. You won't have time to prepare. You'll just have to decide, do you step forward or do you stay in the background? For Aisha, stepping forward opened a door she didn't even know existed. And once she walked through it, nothing was ever the same again. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment of courage to change your life forever. If this story touched your heart, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps more people find these messages of kindness. And if you love hearing real, powerful stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change a life.